Here is my list of fantasy baseball players I'm drafting this year. Coming up next on Beat the Odds, don't go anywhere. Hello, baseball fans. Welcome back to another episode of Beat the Odds. Welcome back to a brand new 2023 MLB season. This is opening day, of course, here. I have compiled a list of all the players that I have been drafting for my baseball drafts this year, and I want to share that with you guys here in this episode. If you'd like this type of content here, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel for more content like this. We'll be doing this all baseball season long. So the list that we have here is pretty straightforward. I'm going to give you my catchers, first baseman, second baseman, third baseman, shortstops, outfielders, starting pitchers, and relievers that I've been picking in early rounds, mid rounds, and late rounds, and kind of having a little bit of discussion as to why I decided to draft these guys here and how they are going to help out my team. A couple of things here before we get started, of course. I typically like to build an all-around type team, so I am going to be hunting stolen bases as much as I'm hunting home runs. And of course, I want my guys to be hitting for higher averages and batting towards the top of the lineups. I do typically give a little bit of a preference to left-handed hitters this year with regards to the change in shift rules. I think that's going to benefit a lot of left-handed batters here this year, and I'm all in on that there. And I'm also not super shy about the injury bug. In a lot of cases, I'm doing head-to-head leagues with a playoff system that's going to start likely in September. So as long as the guys that I draft are available and ready to go by that time, then they are valuable enough to me. I'm also going to use a tiering system to give you guys an idea of where these players' strengths are and how they're going to help out my fantasy squad. Okay, let's start off with some catchers here. We have Adley Rutschman, ADP 86.2, last 785. He is projected to give us a hand in runs and average hitting towards the top of that Baltimore lineup. I think he's going to be a really good selection there for the first 6 catchers off the board. Next up, we got Tyler Stevenson, 164.4 ADP, last 7 at 151.8. Going to help out with runs batted in and average there as well, hitting in the middle of that Cincinnati lineup. He's also going to be playing a lot more than your typical catcher. He's going to possibly play some DH and first base as well. So I think that's going to help us out here as well for getting counting stats. And if you're unlucky and you can't get a solid catcher off the board towards the end of the draft, or if you're in a 2-catcher league, then I would target Keibert Ruiz, starting gig there in Washington. Washington is not going to be picked over all that well over the course of your draft, likely for players, so you should be able to get some good value there. Going to help out with home runs, might be a source of runs and RBI hitting towards the middle of that Washington lineup there as well. Let's move over to some first basemen here. We're going to start with Vlad. I've tried to get him in round 1 if I'm picking towards the back end of that round. He's going to be a phenomenal source of runs, home runs, runs batted in. Going to be a great source for average there as well. Going to chip in with a couple of stolen bases. I think he is the number 1 first baseman in the league here this year for fantasy-wise. A couple of middle tier targets to take a look at. We got Rowdy Tellez, 194.5 ADP, 182.3 last 7. He's going to help out, of course, in home runs. Likely we'll see a bump in average because of the shift rules. I like my lefty batters here this year. And will likely help out with runs batted in as well, hitting towards the middle of that Milwaukee lineup. Then we've got Joey Meneses as well here, Washington first baseman and outfielder, so he's going to carry a couple positions. 181.6 ADP, 171.6 last 7 days here. He's going to be a good source of homers and runs batted in, batting in the middle of that lineup there, of course. Not helping out with stolen bases, but he should be okay on the average front there too. Let's go to some second basemen. We're going to start with Jazz Chisholm. 47.0 ADP, last 7 is 40.1. He is looking to be, I don't know if he's going to be out for much for the season. I think he's actually going to be playing tonight, so no injury tag there on him, which is great. He is going to help you out in runs, home runs, runs batted in, and stolen bases, a rare 4-category second baseman in that sense. Not going to be doing all that well in average, so if he hits 250 or higher there, you should be happy. Brandon Lau is next here, 148.5 ADP, 139.4 last 7 days. He's really going to be a good source of runs and home runs. I'm expecting a big bounce back season here from Brandon Lau. And then he should be able to chip in with some RBIs there as well, batting in the middle of that Tampa Bay lineup. We got Thairo Estrada next here, 162.9 ADP, 142.6 last 7 here. Going to be a good source of steals and should be able to chip in with some runs and average in your average categories there as well. Hopefully we'll be able to get into the top of the San Francisco lineup to be able to score some more runs there for your squad. Let's take a look at some third basemen. We got Austin Riley here, 28.3 ADP, 27.2 last 7. Is going to be elite in home runs and RBI this year. I expect well over 30 home runs, and you should be able to get over 100 RBIs from him there as well, with solid averages here and a good spot to be able to get some runs scored there for him as well, hitting in the middle of that Atlanta stacked lineup. Up next, we got Jordan Walker. You're going to have to reach a little bit for him. His ADP right now is 195, but I feel that's still a little understated, 162.2. To project for him is a little tricky because he hasn't really seen a whole lot of Major League action outside of the preseason here, but I would guess that he is going to be a good source of stolen bases, and will probably chip in a few homers there as well. Currently going to be hitting towards the bottom of the St. Louis lineup, but if he gets on a chair, he could be a impact 5-tool player here this season. And then lastly, Anthony Rendon, 206.9 ADP, 210.7 last 7. Going to give you solid stats across the board here. Not going to, of course, help you out with stolen bases. He's a little bit past that. He is kind of being overlooked in a lot of drafts here, but he is going to be hitting almost immediately behind Mike Trout. So really great position to be scoring some runs, and he can be had at quite a discount here towards the end of your drafts. Up next for shortstops, we're going to take a look at Fernando Tatis, 22.8 ADP, 23.4 last 7 here. I'm projecting his per game rates at least to be S tier for runs and home runs, batting near the top of the San Diego lineup here. I think he is going to be a phenomenal source, one of the top 5 potential players in the league here this year. And of course, he's going to be handy in runs batted in, stolen bases, and average. So he's certainly somebody that I'm targeting. Not too scared about the 20 games missed at the start of the season. We'll find somebody to play the first 20 games or so. As long as we can get him for the other 142 games, I will be happy with that. We're going to look at Wander Franco, somebody to target in the middle rounds here. He's probably going to be going around round 8 or so, round 7-8. He's going to be a good source of stats across the board. Chip in with double-digit home runs, chip in with double-digit steals here, hitting for a potential 300 average. And likely will score a bunch of runs there for the Tampa Bay Rays this season as well. And Anthony Volpe, newly minted shortstop for the New York Yankees. You can get him at 202.5 ADP, 189 last 7. I'm sure that the call-up has increased his draft stock there. I don't know exactly how he's going to pan out, but I think he's going to be okay. Kind of like Jordan Walker there earlier. I would see him as a solid source for runs, possibly hit double-digit home runs this year. I know he's got the power to do so, and he should be able to steal a few bases there for you as well. So I would say pretty good, mid-level player here, maybe able to spike in stolen bases there for you. Going over to some outfielders, we got a few. Let's take a look at some that we would draft relatively early. Ronald Acuna is somebody if I've got the first pick, he's likely coming off the board here for me. ADP 2.6, last 7 he's going around 3. He is going to be your best bet, I believe, this year to get a 40-40 season. Hitting towards the top of that Atlanta lineup here. Not going to knock in as many runs as some of your other outfielders, but he's going to certainly score them in tons and hit for a decent average as well. Up next in Chicago, I am looking for a bounce-back season for Luis Robert. I don't think we've fully seen what he's capable of. I think he's kind of profiles as an Acuna light, and he should be able to contribute quite well across the board, all 5 areas there, if he is 100%. And then lastly, his stock has been rising quite a bit over the course of the preseason. Corbin Carroll, 78.1 ADP, 73.3 last 7. He's set to hit at the top of the Arizona lineup here, which should give him a lot of runs scored, and he's one of the fastest human beings on the planet, so I would imagine he's going to be raking in stolen bases there as well. And he should be able to chip in a solid amount of homers there for you too. So I think he's a really good outfielder to be able to target in the early middle rounds of your draft. Here are some outfielders you can target towards the middle of your draft here. Christian Yelich, 115.2 ADP, 109.5 last 7. Is going to be a good source of runs and could pop 25 over the fence this year. Hopefully he will. And then he should be solid pretty much across the board everywhere else. He was not too long ago removed from an MVP season here. I think he still has the ability to replicate a lot of that. I wouldn't write him off quite yet here. Power is certainly down, but he's got the tools to be able to contribute across the board for sure. Taylor Ward is next here, 129.5 ADP, 119 last 7. He is going to be batting kind of in and around that Mike Trout, Shohei Ohtani spot in the lineup here, so he should be able to score quite a few runs, and he's got a lot of power on his own there. Likely not going to drive in a whole bunch unless he's hitting behind them, and should be able to chip in with a couple stolen bases and at a pretty solid average clip. And then Bryce Harper, of course, he's going to be missing the first couple of months likely of the season here, but he's certainly somebody that I am targeting for my leagues. I expect him to be back to full health here, hopefully by the All-Star break. And once he does, he is going to be, per game, a beast with runs, homers, and runs batted in. And he's going to be able to do that with a really good average, and he's going to be able to chip in with some stolen bases there as well. He is going to help out any fantasy squad, especially those that play in a head-to-head format where playoffs will be at the end of the season. And then to wrap up outfielders here, we got 3 that you can get towards the end of your draft here. Lars Nootbaar, 190.8 ADP, 180.6 last 7. Pretty solid across the board. Nothing super spectacular that stands out there for me with what we can expect from Lars Nootbaar, but he should be able to contribute pretty evenly across the board there in all 5 categories. His runs and runs batted in will likely fluctuate depending on where he gets placed in the order. If he's going to be placed ahead, you can expect him to score a few more runs. If he's placed kind of in that 6th spot, you should be able to expect for him to be able to drive in some more runs. We'll see kind of how the season goes there for him. Garrett Mitchell, another one here to take a look at, 222.4 ADP, 219.8 last 7 here. He's going to be a good source of steals at a decent average there, likely hitting towards the top of the Milwaukee lineup there as well. And then last but not least, we got Masataka Yoshida, somebody that I've been targeting really hard this year in all my drafts. 184.1 ADP, 156.8 last 7. I'd even take him a little bit earlier than that. There is talk of him leading off in Boston, and if he does that, you can expect that his runs will be high because he's an on-base machine, and he should be able to pitch in kind of across the board in every other category except for stolen bases. He's not really going to help you out much there. Moving on to some pitchers here, we have Corbin Burnes, Milwaukee, 14.2 ADP, 14.9 last 7. I'm targeting him. If I can get him in the 2nd round, then he's certainly somebody that I'll be looking at picking up. Not going to be elite in wins playing for Milwaukee. I expect to see a bit of a regression for that team here coming in this year, but he's going to be elite with all your stats. He's going to be one of the best K9, and he's going to be posting some really good ERA and WHIP numbers there for you. Jacob deGrom is somebody else I'm looking at here, 32.4 ADP, 32.6 last 7. Again, playing for Texas, likely not going to be winning a ton of games this season. Also, we're worried about injuries and stuff with Jacob deGrom. He hasn't really played a full season in quite some time. But if he does get playing time, again, we're looking at elite K9 numbers, elite ERA, elite WHIP. He could be a difference maker in your season here. So I'm betting for his health, which might kick me in the butt here later on in the season. But I think it's worth the gamble here in the 3rd round if you can get him. And then we got Shane McClanahan here as well, 35.2 ADP, 35.9. Last 7, he is likely going to win a few more games than, say, a Jacob deGrom, with similar stat lines, maybe not quite so high in the K9. But he should be a solid, if not spectacular, starting pitcher 1 for your team there as well. Moving into the second tier of pitchers, we got Tyler Glasnow, 119.0 ADP, 145.6 last 7. He's, of course, going to be on the injured list here for a little bit with a strained oblique, but that's basically just going to shift his innings pitch that they were figuring he's going to be pitching for this year towards the back end of the season, which, again, I'm perfectly fine with in head-to-head leagues. It doesn't scare me at all. As long as he can come back healthy within 6 to 8 weeks or so, then we can expect that he's going to perform at a very high level throughout the rest of the season. Logan Webb, 102.3 ADP, 94.1 last 7. He should be a bona fide number 1 starter there for San Francisco. Likely will, if he's healthy, if he remains healthy for the course of the season here, he should be able to rack up 30-plus starts. Which means he should be in line for a fair amount of wins. Could post 13 wins this year. Hopefully he will. With solid peripherals here, not exactly a canine specialist. He'll likely get you around a strikeout an inning, maybe a little less. But everything else there points towards him being a solid option there for a second starter for your team. And then we got Jeffrey Springs, another phenomenal option in that Tampa Bay rotation. 144.2 ADP, 130.1 last 7. Tampa Bay is known to pull the hook really quickly on starting pitchers, so I'm not expecting a ton of victories here for Jeffrey Springs, but he should come with a healthy K9 and healthy ERA and whip numbers this year, so he's certainly somebody that I would target in the middle rounds to get onto the team. And then for the SP3s here, you're looking at Kodai Senga, 198.5 ADP, 200 last 7. He should fit in quite nicely as that third starter here in New York. Likely will be given a bunch of wins here on that strong team and should be able to get you pretty solid peripherals across the board. The league doesn't know him here, which might be at his advantage. So you may see some higher strikeout numbers towards the start of the season, but I think he's polished enough a pitcher from Japan that would be able to hold well over the course of the season here in the MLB. We have Hunter Brown, 205.3 ADP, 196.6 last 7. Likely scheduled in as the number 5 starter for Houston. Houston is going to be a hotbed for victories here this season. So loading up on Houston pitchers is never a bad idea. And of course, Hunter Brown, as some of you may know, has mimicked Justin Verlander in his delivery, which cannot be a bad thing here. So I expect some good numbers from him. Certainly worth a flyer towards the end of your draft. And then lastly, we got Reed Detmers, 236.7 ADP, 226.2 last 7. There's talk of his velocity going up, which is always something you like to hear about starting pitchers. That typically leads to better strikeout numbers. We'll see how that goes here for Detmers this year. But I think pitching with the Angels, if they got everything figured out this year, he might be a sneaky pick for 12 to 14 wins this season, which would be a real boon for those who picked him up that late in a draft. And lastly, let's take a look at some relievers here. We're going to start in San Diego. We got Josh Hader, 51.7 ADP, 54.1 last 7. I'm buying into the fact that last year was a bit of an aberration, so I expect that he should be returning to dominance here this year. I expect elite numbers in saves and K9, and he should have serviceable number for his ERA and then quality whip there as well. We also have Devin Williams, 55.8 ADP, 54.5 the last 7. Kind of like Hader here, he's going to be amongst the league leaders for saves with a crazy changeup that kind of disappears on a lot of people there, that racks up a lot of strikeouts there too. I imagine his peripherals will be a little bit stronger than Hader's this year, but of course, there's talk of there being a lot of strain on the shoulder from pitching that changeup, so we'll see if he holds up over the course of the season. Hopefully he will, but he's certainly somebody that I am targeting here in drafts. In the second tier of relievers, I've got Alexis Diaz, 120.8 ADP, 115.8 last 7. Going to be closing games for Cincinnati, which truthfully is not necessarily a bad thing. Of course, Cincinnati is going to likely be a bottom feeder this year in the MLB, but that doesn't necessarily mean that Alexis Diaz is going to see a lot of save chances here. I imagine they'll be in a few short, close games where they're going to be needing to call on him here. And if they do, you can expect to see some really good K9 numbers with solid ERA and WHIP there as well. And we also have Andres Munoz, 148.9 ADP, 141.9 last 7. Likely not going to be the closer to start the season in Seattle, but he is quite possibly the best reliever in that very strong relief core. So you can expect that he's going to be able to get a bunch of holds, and he's going to be amongst the league leaders for relievers in K9 numbers and ERA. Certainly somebody that I wouldn't mind stashing in the case that he does happen to get more save chances. He'll likely make it to double-digit saves over the course of the season just to relieve Paul Sewald. But there's, he's a Paul Sewald injury or slump away from earning that closer spot there outright. And then for the final tier of relievers, we have Alex Lange, 198.2 ADP, 198.2 last 7. Solid reliever here. You're looking for, at this point here at the end of the draft, you're just looking for guys who will likely be in a good position to rack up saves, and Lange is one of them here. He's not going to hurt you really in any peripherals. He should be able to get you 15 to 20 saves over the course of the season there as well. And then we also have Pete Fairbanks, 158.0 ADP, 158 last 7 here. Similar to Munoz, he's not necessarily a lock to close games in Tampa Bay. Kevin Cash actually does like to play committee with a lot of his save chances there. But again, like Munoz, Fairbanks is arguably the best reliever in that relief core, so he'll likely see a lot of high pressure situations, and as a result will likely pick up a few saves along the way. And that's going to wrap up the players that I've been drafting here this year. I hope you guys enjoyed this content. If you did, please be sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel, as we will be doing fantasy baseball episodes all season long. But that's going to do it for this one here. Thank you guys again for watching. We will sign off for now, but we will catch you guys on our next episode.